this is called the Purpose Summit. And I can't tell you how many times I've been told that purpose, oh, that fluffy stuff, we don't got time for that. We got stuff we need to get done, right? We've got work we need to do. Purpose can be a fluffy word because people tend to demonize what they don't understand or what makes them scared. Purpose is big. It's huge. I mean, people have been asking, what's the meaning of life? What's my purpose? Since the Greeks first asked the question, why? And probably even before that. We all struggle with trying to identify that because a grandiose purpose for our lives can be intimidating. But the reality is, when you start to unpack purpose, and you're going to hear purpose unpacked in multiple ways over the next 3 days. People have different philosophies on that. They've got different philosophies on where it comes from, whether it's singular or whether it's plural, whether it's a grandiose idea for your life, whether it's tied to your identity. We're going to explore all those individually, and we're also going to explore them organizationally. But if there is one thing that I want you to get away from what I'm going to share with you tonight, it's that purpose is not fluff. Purpose is hard. And you guys made a decision to take time out of your busy schedules to actually engage the hardest question that humanity seeks on a daily basis. How many of you are parents in this room? Raise your hand. Is parenting hard? Okay. If you didn't laugh at that or you didn't raise your hand, then we're going to have an integrity conversation later. Okay? So parenting is hard. So I want to start by showing you a picture of my daughter, Vera. We have 2 kids. I'm married to a beautiful woman named Amy. We've been married for 16 years. We're blessed to have a 12-year-old girl named Vera who thinks that she's turning 22. And we have a 9-year-old boy who somehow feels like he's going the other way because he's kind of lost his best friend. She's entering middle school. She's in middle school. He's still in elementary school. And they're having a little bit of identity crisis. It's a blessing to be their parent. What I want to bring you back to is a time that was so definitive for me where I can literally look back and say, this was a purpose point in my life. Purpose point is more than just the name of a company or a tack on a shirt. We have purpose points in our life that we can look back and say, that was a defining moment. That was a defining moment. That was a defining moment. The day that we become parents is a purpose point. It's a defining moment. The day we find our spouses, it's a purpose point. The day that we decide what we're going to do with our careers, it's a purpose point. There are multiple purpose points throughout your life. I want to take you back to a particularly hard one for me. And it was back in 2014, Vera and I were driving to school, and she loves to sing. She's very musical, and we're driving, and we've got the song playing in the car, and she's singing, and she's laughing in the back, and I'm singing with her, and we're driving, and we do the Michigan turnaround. We live in Michigan. They've got these things called Michigan lefts. I'm not going to explain it to you. We'll be here all night long if I try to. But we do this Michigan left thing, and we start to make a right. We go down the street, and I put my left-hand blinker on. And in Michigan, sometimes they actually sometimes, because the roads in Michigan, if you live there, you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes they actually pave the shoulder so that you could go around cars that are making a left-hand turn. So I put my left-hand turn signal on, car goes around me, she's singing. Next thing I know, boom. Car slams into us at 50 miles an hour and crushes the car to Vera's car seat. And all I remember is screaming and the smell of gas and thinking, how do I get out of this car? How do I get her out of this car? That's all that mattered. I went so far forward, I hit the steering wheel, I went back, broke my chair, and I'm laying parallel, staring at my screaming baby girl. Not able to move, thinking, I gotta get her out of the car. I had one singular purpose in that moment. I have to get my daughter out of the car. I don't remember much of what happened after that, other than our church, our school, her school happens to be our church. And at that time, the bang was so loud that the people from inside the classrooms actually came out to our aid, and they did whatever they could to get us out of the car. I went in an ambulance. I went to the hospital. And all I kept on saying is, did Vera make it out of the car? And they told me, yes, she made it out of the car. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm lying in this bed, and they say, don't move. Don't move. And I'm sitting there for 3 hours with this neck brace on, strapped down to an IV. Haven't talked to my wife, haven't talked to Vera. Bennett, our youngest son at the time was a baby. And I had a lot of time to process my life in that 3 hours. Would I walk again? Would I hold them again? Would I do all the things that I love to do that make me come alive? Would I play the piano? Would I sing? Would I play hockey? Would I do all these things? Would I be able to walk my daughter down the aisle? Would I be able to play sports with my son? Would I ever be able to stand up and speak in front of people again? Would I be able to write? All of the things that I tied my purpose to in that moment was a question mark. And so in that, I had a lot of time to process, where does purpose come from? And if I'm a vegetable, or if I can't get out of this bed, what am I going to do with my life? I had questions. But it shouldn't take a car accident that none of us are expecting to wake us up to those questions. And so I'm hoping, I am deeply hoping, that over these next 3 days, you awake to those questions. Because I don't want you to have to go through an experience like that, to ask yourself that. Because those are the questions that matter. I came out of this and I sat down with a friend of mine as I was questioning my life and what I was going to do with it. And he introduced me to this book called Halftime. Anybody ever read Halftime? Life-transforming book for me. You're going to hear lots of stories about this, but Halftime basically, Bob Buford makes the case is that we are conditioned for success, but we are created for significance. And so what happens is we run this rabbit race of life. We've become human doings rather than human beings. We go, we go, we go, we go. You heard Paul talk about, maybe my ladder's up against the wrong wall. How do I know that? This book transformed the way I think of saying, what's the difference that I'm making? What's the impact that I'm making? What is going to matter when I am no longer here? It asked the tough questions. And I realized I spent my whole life chasing success. More and more and more. The next status, the next paycheck, the next salary, the next bigger house. My grandparents had no garage. My parents had a 1-car garage. We needed to have a 2-car garage. We just need to do a little bit better than the generation before us. I was chasing the wrong thing. And so I started to search for purpose. And that's what led to the book, Finding Purpose at Work, where I started to look at, well, what does it mean to find purpose, not just in our jobs, but purpose at work in our life? Meaning is if purpose took on a persona, you could look back at all of the different defining purpose points in your life, and you could use that as a blueprint, as a guide to help answer the tough questions. And that's where that was birthed out of. And in that, I started to research purpose. And many of you have seen this. I didn't come up with this. This Venn diagram has been around for a long time. There's a lot of people who study it, and there's different ways to approach this. But here's what I want you to take away from a starting point. For me, purpose is made up of 4 basic components. You have what you love, you have what you're great at, you have what the world needs, and you have what you're paid to do. Most people look at this and they say, how do I get paid to do what I love to do? And that's not the starting point of purpose. That's how we tend to approach it. The starting point of purpose is asking, what are my unique gifts, talents, and abilities, skill sets, experiences, insights? What are the things that I am good at and great at, and where's the need? Where does the world need that? How can I connect the different parts of who I am to where the need is to leave others better than when I found them, to make a difference in this world? That's where significance lives. That's not where success lives. But we want to chase success. We want to get paid to do what we love to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I would argue that if all you do is try to figure out, how do I get paid to do what I love to do, and you make it about you, you will always have this fleeting question of purpose. Always. There's these words that constantly get confused with each other. And it's kind of, our team jokes about this all the time because it's kind of a sore spot for me. We go back and forth about the difference between purpose and why. And I love Simon Sinek, and of course his work start with why. And then there's mission and vision and values and all of these different things that we throw on company walls and we put in employee handbooks, and they're supposed to mean something. But there's a difference between those words. And I kind of want to walk you through, for me, how I define those. You see, purpose is your reason for being. It is what you exist to do, individually or organizationally. What are your resources? What are the gifts, talents, abilities, insights, the things that you have within you that when you activate them, make an impact? Your mission is the impact of that purpose. Now follow me here. Your vision is the impact of your mission. And your why is your reason for doing it all. And it's usually tied to a who. So let me give you an example and bring this to life for you. This is our son, Bennett. Bennett loves to go fast. He is the fastest kid I've ever seen. He is super fast. So it's no, mistake that his favorite superhero is the Flash. And so this is actually perfect, by the way. I was asking my wife, do we have a picture of Bennett on a bike? And she sent it to me, and he happened to be wearing his Flash shirt. I'm like, this could not be even more perfect. So he loves to go fast. And one day he comes up and he goes, Dad, my bike won't go as fast as I want my bike to go. So what do we do when there's gears that are like kind of jammed and gooey and bikes don't go as fast as we do? Well, we go into our garage and we pull out a magic blue can of WD-40. We're going to hear from our friend Gary Ridge later tonight, who you'll see this again. So I take the WD-40, I spray it in the gears start to move, the bike starts to go faster, Bennett starts to have a great time and do what he envisioned. So let's take you back to this. Okay, the purpose of the can was to make the gears go faster. Why? So that the bike, the mission, the impact of the purpose, could go as fast as it can. Why? The vision was to see my son be able to go as fast as he wanted to. It was the impact of the mission, of the purpose. And the why was him. Our whys are usually tied to our whos in our life. So the next time that you're trying to figure out what's the difference between purpose, mission, vision, why, all these words, think what's within you that can activate impact on others. What do you want that impact to do? What do you want that to look like? What's the mission of that? What do you want the impact of that to be on a larger scale? Because at the end of the day, for me, it was Bennett going fast. It wasn't the bike going fast. If the bike went fast but Bennett wasn't on it, it didn't matter. And that's the why, the who. Now, before I go any further, I want to talk about these concepts of different types of places that purpose lives. And I only have about 2 minutes and 49, 47, 46 seconds to tell you this. So there's a whole talk on this, but I'm going to show you this. You can take a picture of it, and we will unpack it at a later time. But there is organizational purpose, there is employer associate purpose, and there is customer purpose. If you were to ask WD-40 what their organizational purpose is, it is to make memories. It's a much longer statement than that. Gary could talk about that later today, but it's to make memories. Who do they want to make memories for? They want to make memories for their employees and for their customers, basically anyone that their lives touch. The intersections that we spend a lot of time talking about are these words called experiences. And we spend a lot of time in marketing and branding and leadership talking about how we shape experiences. We spend a lot of time talking about the employee experience, which is where the employee purpose and organizational purpose meet. We spend a lot of time talking about brand experience, which is where organizational purpose and customer purpose meet, right? If this did not fix my son's bike, it would have been a bad brand experience for me. No? Yes, right? And then we talk a lot about customer experience. And that's where employee purpose and customer purpose intersect. So this product can work really great, and WD-40 can have a really great brand. But you know what? Now they've got one of the best cultures that are out there. But let's say for a second it was a different company and they didn't have a great culture and I had a problem and I called one of the employees there and they weren't interested in solving my problem or meeting me in my customer purpose. I could have a really bad customer experience, and then that can reflect badly on the brand experience. It can reflect badly on the employee experience, and you can see how these things overlapped. Purpose is not fluff. It is foundational to the very thing that all of you are trying to lead individually and organizationally. Now, that said, purpose also comes from different places. We all have different paradigms, mindsets of where we think purpose comes from, and there's different pieces of that represented across the room. But for me, it would be disingenuous for me not to share a story about where my purpose comes from, and that's from my faith journey. I'm not going to turn this into a sermon, but I wanted to share that with you. We are at the University of Notre Dame. But I was at a faith-based conference 3 weeks ago, and it was C12's Current 23 conference that they do every other year. Phenomenal conference. There was 1,300 CEOs, business owners, leaders from around the world gathered in Denver. And they were a little bit enamored with kind of this thing called Purpose Point and the Purpose Summit and kind of how this all came together. And they called us and they said, can we do a story on this? And so they sent a film crew up in November to Michigan to do a little bit of a background story on my life and then eventually Purpose Point and the Purpose Summit. And I struggled. I'm going to be honest with you. I struggled over the last week. Do I play this? Because it was meant for that conference. And I don't want this in any way to, shape or push my opinions or beliefs on you, but it would be, I think, unfair not to tell you the story of how we all ended up here. So without further ado, I'd like to share with you a little story about how we ended up at Notre Dame.
To be seen means to be present. We live in such a busy world where we're going and we're going, we're doing and doing. We've become human doings rather than human beings. And so when I look at my life, at the people who saw me, they were people that regardless of what was going on around them, regardless of how busy that they were being or needed to be or wherever they needed to be, they were present in that moment. They made me feel like I was the only thing that mattered in that room. And to me, that's what it means to be seen. When bad things happen to us, we tend to ask, why is this happening? Instead ask, God, what is it you're doing? What is it that you want me to learn? I didn't know that as a kid. We went through a very challenging childhood. My sister and I, our parents divorced when I was 5 and my sister was 1, and we went to go live with my grandparents. And there was a lot of dysfunction. I watched our family fall apart. There was a sense of identity, I guess, that was lost. And you could say that I was looking for the purpose in it, but there was this innate idea that I'm going through this for a reason. There is a greater purpose, and at some point in my life, I'm going to use this to positively impact others. I may have been 8 when I had that thought, and I don't know where it came from or how it happened, but it was such a blessing because it created this silver lining in what was going on. And there was this one pivotal moment, this one day, where we were in a grocery store after school, and there was one of my teachers was standing there, and she turned and she said, "Hi, Davin," and she saw me. For a moment, she saw just me, and it was the first time that I feel like I'd ever been actually seen. And that had a profound impact on my life. I never forget that moment. And then my senior year of high school, we moved from Philadelphia to Michigan, and I became very bitter. I basically threw away my senior year, and for the next 6 years, I was back in that bitterness that I was back as a child, questioning things. But there was a purpose that God was shaping through all of this. I just couldn't see it yet. And it didn't come clear to me until this one day, 6 years after this, at my first real job at Costco, where I had a decision of surrender to make. I was offered an opportunity to go back to Philly, to actually open the first Costco in Philly, right by my grandparents' house. And I said yes to that decision. I felt like that was an answered prayer. But shortly after I said yes to that decision, I began to struggle. There was something that was uneasy about that. I can hear God saying, listen, if you want to go back to Philly, I've opened that door for you. But if you're willing to give that back to me and let go of all of this pain, of all of this bitterness, of everything that you struggle with, I have a greater purpose for your life. And so the next day I went in and rescinded the job offer to Philly and told them that God told me to stay here. They thought I was crazy. One of the most foundational purpose moments for me at Costco was when I met Jim Senegal. He was the CEO and founder of Costco. And Jim, I learned so much about business from Jim. I remember the first time he came into our store and he reached out and he said, "Hi, I'm Jim. What's your name?" And I said, I'm Davin. He said, Davin, tell me, why do you work at Costco? What is it that you love about working here? What are we doing well? What could we be doing better? It was the best engagement survey that I'd ever seen before engagement surveys were a thing. But one of the things that I learned was to see people. I felt seen by Jim. Jim was very present in the moment. There was a lot to do, but he was very present in the moment. So I learned about being a present leader at Costco. And then I went to go work at Macy's. And during a short 3-year stint at Macy's, I used what I learned at Costco about seeing people, about being a present leader, about identifying kind of the purpose that each person had at work. And I think that was the very first time that purpose at work became a thing for me. After 3 years at Macy's, I got recruited by CVS Pharmacies. I knew nothing about pharmacies. I knew nothing about healthcare. And they recognized this gift for me to be able to connect people. And really what I was able to do was connect people to their purpose at work every single day. I realized all of a sudden, all of these memories from my childhood of all of these different things, there was these moments of significance that I wanted those to happen in the lives of others. And so I decided I was going to start a consulting company, call it Purpose Point. I was going to help individuals rediscover what their purpose is and help organizations remember what their founding purpose was and to connect those two things.
Davin was giving talks about company purpose and how companies can fulfill their purpose by stewarding their people well. And he met Kurt David through C12.
Kurt David was traveling talking about individual purpose as a former athlete. And I was traveling talking about organizational purpose. I thought, hey, you know what? Maybe Purpose Point isn't supposed to be my thing. Maybe Purpose Point is supposed to be this place where individual purpose and organizational purpose connect.
And so they kind of decided to come together and say, hey, why don't we just bring the conversation to us? And that was when they founded the Purpose Summit.
Have day one focused on individual purpose, have day two focused on organizational purpose, and create the platform for all of these speakers to share their stories and invite people and companies to come to the conversation. We end up borrowing a repurposed 157,000 square foot historic school building, and 300 people come together for this conversation. And it was absolutely transformative. And at the end of the conversation, one of the people in the audience came up to me and they started telling me about all of the things that happened in their life. And they didn't know why they had happened. They'd spent their entire life questioning all of those things that happened. And it was at this moment at the summit, it had all come together for them. And they'd realized that all of those purpose points that had happened on their life had led to this moment of where they were at in their career at a particular time. And it was in that moment that I realized that all of the things that had happened in my life, from the divorce to the move to Michigan, to the job changes, to starting Purpose Point, to all these things led to this moment of that this is what God wanted me to do. He wanted me to see people, to see their purpose, to see God's plan. Little did I know from that point forward, it would take this thing from an idea in a blighted school building repurposed in Detroit to the University of Notre Dame at Notre Dame Stadium.
Through his experiences and through his faith journey, he was able to take those experiences and say, there is a better way to love and lead people.
Each one of us has gifts, and sometimes we're not aware of what they are. Sometimes people tell us that we're good at something, but we don't believe it. And we dismiss that. And that thing is the gift that we were meant to give to the world. It's the reason that God put us here. It's our purpose. It's our contribution. And I think so many CEOs are so focused on the deliverables and the results of their business, and those are important. But the reality is the greatest purpose of any business is our people. And the greatest role of any leader, of any CEO, is to steward those people, to see them for who they are, to see them to who they can be, to see the purpose that God has for them and their organization, and how their organization can help those people become who God created them to be.
We all have an opportunity to see people. If you're struggling to find your purpose, I encourage you to start by seeing the people that are in front of you, to find your who and maybe work backwards through that equation to get to purpose that I shared with you earlier today. We all have who's in our lives. For me, my family is one of my who's. My wife Amy, my daughter Vera, our son Bennett. My family, friends and family, are my who's. This is our Purpose Point team at the red carpet of the Purpose Point Experience last year. Some people are our who's who aren't with us today. You heard me talk about my grandparents. My grandparents had a profound impact on my life, who shaped who I was. So maybe there's people in our past that aren't with us anymore, but we want to honor them. And those are who's. And then occasionally, you get like a crazy idea in your head, like, hey, I've got this vision. I want to start a company and I want to do a summit, and people think you're nuts. And then they believe in kind of what it is that you're envisioning, and they get a hold of it. And they say, you know what, I'm not really sure about all this, but there might be something here. And they trust you, and they challenge you, and they ground you. And so I get a lot of credit for Purpose Point and for the Purpose Summit. But the reality is that Purpose Point and Purpose Summit was co-founded by myself and Kurt David. Kurt David, as you saw in that video, has been a dear, dear friend to me, who, quite frankly, without, I probably would have given up on this many, many times. When times get tough, it's our who that keeps us moving forward. And we have many who's in our lives.